Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. CNBC host Joe Kernen is one of Donald Trump's most loyal media supporters. And Kernen just got humiliated to his face by former Biden Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. The topic was inflation.
It's higher than when he got here, Joe.
It's not 9%.
His central campaign promise was he was going to take inflation and drive it down, and instead he took inflation and it's up.
I thought in the Fed,
it was 3 when he got here, and now it's more. It could not be simpler than that.
It's around 3, and we're involved in a war.
He said on day one it would go down. He came in on day one, and now it's up.
It's up to 3%. It was 21.5% price increases.
He promised it would go down
over 4 years. Over 4 years, it was 21.5%.
He promised it would go down.
Democrats own the affordability crisis.
Listen to me.
And that prompted CNBC host Andrew Ross Sorkin, if you look closely, to openly laugh at Joe Kernen.
Why did the president fail to keep his promise?
You don't think Democrats own the affordability crisis?
Why did the president fail to keep his promise to lower prices, in your opinion?
I'm laughing because this piece of it is basic. The president did say that he wanted to be in office to bring inflation down, and he has not brought inflation down. That's all.
He drove it up. He not only failed, he drove it up.
Mr. Secretary, let's talk
Tariffs
a little bit.
have had a minimal effect.
You tell a family where I live that $1,000 per household is minimal.
From the 21.5% increase that the Democrats.
No, we can argue all day about just how bad COVID was and how bad it got and what it took to come back from that. But you call it $1,000. Where I live, $1,000 per household isn't minimal.
Now Democrats found religion on inflation. After presiding over the worst inflation in 40 years, now you found religion.
It's 2026. They're in charge. You guys are in charge.
I'm aware of that.
What are you going to do differently?
The discussion came minutes after a Trump administration government report on consumer prices. Headline, U.S. inflation tripled last month on record spike in gas prices. Quote, the war with Iran drove up monthly U.S. inflation threefold in March, according to the latest Consumer Price Index report released Friday morning. The annual rate of inflation reached 3.3% in March, up from 2.4% in February. The monthly rate measured 0.9%. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics, the price spike was overwhelmingly driven by spiraling energy costs from the chokehold that Iran has on global oil supply. Gasoline rose by a record 21.2% last month.
Look,
what are you going to do differently to make the prices actually go down like you promised a year ago?
Number one, we got to get through this war, and you've heard people...
We got to get through this war. We didn't have to be fighting this war. What are we doing?
That's a matter of opinion. You can't say that.
It's a matter of opinion that I share with most Americans and a large number of Republicans and a whole bunch of MAGA people who bought into this president because they actually believed in what he said he would get us into the war.
Republican approval for the war.
You don't start with the approval you have within your own party. But the point is, the MAGA coalition...
Democrats aren't going to approve of anything.
I'm talking about Americans. Americans disapprove of the president and their right to do so.
He's got the same approval rating other presidents have had at this point in the term, a little bit above, 42%.
Actually, it's not 42%, it is lower.
President Trump's approval rating has hit a new low for a second term. According to a new CNN SSRS poll, President Trump's approval is at 35%.
That's lower than all other presidents in the modern era at this point in their term. On the economy, Trump's approval rating is also lower, and his disapproval is higher.
72% in our latest CNN poll say they disapprove of the president on inflation. Joe Biden, an average of polls at this point in his presidency, 68%. And Jimmy Carter, whose presidency, just like Joe Biden's, was absolutely wrecked by inflation, was at 66%, about at this point in his presidency back in 1978. Donald Trump, even worse than they are.
Good reasons, one of which is
no
that
more
he's made
unpopular
life
than
more
Obama
expensive.
was or Biden was at the same term of at the same point of his presidency.
That depends on which polls you're looking at, but by and large, no. I'm sorry, but I've been out on the trail. I was in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is a Trump plus 38 district. Or it was.
I know the numbers.
500 people.
You'll get a chance to prove that in November this year.
Okay.
And in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, a Republican just won the special election to replace her, beating the Democrat by 12 points, even though Greene and Donald Trump in 2024 carried the district by more than 38 points. That's a 26-point swing towards Democrats in the reddest of Republican-red districts. Many Republicans, like many Democrats, have been put off by the war in Iran. Buttigieg also humiliated and shamed Kernen over that, saying Americans are right to be infuriated over the war.
And look, I'm saying this as somebody who knows what it's like to be sent to war by a U.S. president. And when a president sends you to war, when you and your buddies are on that gray tail plane going into a war zone, you do it with some level of confidence, some level of assurance that your chain of command, all the way
Now
up
that
to the
we're
President
there,
of the United States,
doesn't
would
even
not
sound
do
like
this if they didn't
now
have
that
a
we're there.
choice.
Do you hope this has a successful outcome? There were 40,000 Iranians that were slaughtered by the same regime.
And this is the
47
other-
years of killing
Exactly.
Americans, stirring trouble all around the world.
And
with
how do you
proxies.
feel about that regime being left intact by this president?
I don't
thought
know
we were
if
getting
that's
rid of
going to
them.
be the case, and I don't know
It's the
what
case
might
now.
happen.
It's the
Is
case
that an
now.
argument for? Is that an argument?
So you don't want this to work, and it was just a bad move. You want us to pull out now.
Well, look, there's no obvious way out now, but I want to make sure that this ends in a way that, first of all, our economy can recover, that we're not paying so much for gas. I mean, right now, oil's $100, jet fuel's $200, gas is over $4, diesel's
You
like
averaged
$5.50.
380 under Biden for 4 years.
Yeah,
Secretary.
and when we left, inflation was lower than it is today.
Right, you accounted for
This
21.5% price increase.
This president took the
Inflation's
inflation rate up.
2.7 inflation-
This president
it's
took the
2.7%.
inflation rate up.
It's
It's more than 3%
2.7%.
year on year. You saw the numbers just come out. It's more than 3% year on year.
Okay. There's
Isn't it?
PCE,
Am I
there's
3.3%
core.
mistaken?
It is.
sorry?
The math is direct.
Yeah.
The math is the math.
Look, it couldn't be
fluctuates each
simpler.
month from 2.7 to 3%.
Kernen did that little trick we've often seen from conservatives in the Trump era: disbelieve or simply ignore the numbers you don't like. Kernen then finished with one more argument that backfired in Kernen's face. The host tried to explain to Buttigieg that being president is not easy.
Presidents make difficult decisions, obviously.
Yeah, but usually they make difficult decisions to try to make other people better off. This president's made decisions to make himself better off. That's definitely happened. If you're the kind of person who can pay $1 million for the entry fee to Mar-a-Lago, then you're doing great. But everybody else is hurting right now.
And nobody is hurting more emotionally on this day than CNBC's Joe Kernen. That was brutal. Pete Buttigieg humiliated and shamed Kernen to his face. Kernen flailed and got laughed at by one of his own colleagues. And at several points, Joe Kernen looked like Kernen, was about to stroke out or have a coronary. Pete Buttigieg dog-walked Kernen over the Iran war and inflation. Now, to be fair, Pete Buttigieg is really good at explaining things and winning these debates. Buttigieg is calm, matter of fact, and deals in reality. Joe Kernen, on the other hand, is awful, and sometimes Kernen's Fantasyland delusions come back and backfire on the CNBC host. This was one of those times. But kudos to CNBC for bringing on Pete Buttigieg. Hopefully, before long, there will be a Buttigieg-Kernen rematch. Though I doubt Joe Kernen will agree to another one, because this was a total beatdown. By the way, Pete Hegseth's team at the Pentagon is getting shredded now for threatening Pope Leo. Pentagon threatened the Pope after he criticized Trump.
War is back in vogue, and a zeal for war is spreading.
Pete Hegseth's deputies, Undersecretary Elbridge Colby, summoned to the Pentagon Cardinal Christopher Pierre, who serves as an ambassador for Pope Leo. And then, as first reported by the Free Press in a story titled, "Why the Vatican and the White House Are on the Outs," Colby allegedly told Cardinal Pierre, "The United States has the military power to do whatever it wants in the world. The Catholic Church had better take its side." Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from FR, who wrote, "You have to be a certain kind of stupid to threaten a pope." Indeed. I look forward to reading your comments about the special kind of stupid that is Joe Kernen. On CNBC, Pete Buttigieg destroyed him. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.